Hello and welcome everybody to the Pokerfuse podcast. It is April 12th, 2019. This is episode 11. I am your host, Mike Gentili, along with my co-host, Nick Jones. Nick, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty good. You say episode 11. It could be season 2, episode 1.
Season 2, episode 1, officially in the books. Well, not yet, but officially on its way.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We missed last week. Apologies to our regular listeners that we didn't get it out last week. What excuse are we giving our viewership, Mike?
We are going to give the excuse that we had a scheduled break between the end of season 1 and the beginning of season 2. Yeah, okay. Sound good.
So I took a semi break last week, and the plan was we were going to record last Wednesday. And we were pretty jammed with getting the pro report complete, which we just about managed to do. And we also looked at the schedule, and there was very little to talk about, we felt. So we found a reason to kind of not do it. And now we're sitting here putting together show notes on a Friday, so we're a day late today as well. And we probably are going to have a double length show as to pay our dues for this week. Yeah.
So it seemed like a lot of the news last week actually hit toward the latter part of the week. So recording a day early didn't really fit well with the news gods out there. But I think recording a day late this week is going to pay off when we do have an extended episode.
Yeah, so buckle up and enjoy this, what could be, an hour-long episode of the Pokerfuse podcast.
This time of year is really exciting for online poker players as all of the major rooms are running their spring tournament series, probably the biggest time of the year from a prize pool perspective, would you say, Nick?
Yeah, certainly. And I think, so today we had the Scoop 2019 schedule release. So that kind of is the last of all the major operators. And it's going to be the last schedule of the season as well. So right now we have Party Poker's Powerfest running, 888's Blizzard is running, Unibet and MPN series running a week or two, but it's going to be, Scoop is not going to be for a month's time, and the details are just coming out now. We have the total prize pool, total number of tournaments. I think that the schedule might have literally just been released as we sat down to record this, but yeah, so that is spring pretty much, all in the schedule.
Well, there's plenty to talk about the Scoop schedule for sure, but before we get on to that, there's also another site that's running a spring tournament series that really hasn't made it onto our radar in recent years, but seems to be coming in with a big splash this spring. That would be...
Yes. Yeah, so GG Network is... I'm not sure if we've talked about them much on this podcast at all.
Well, a little bit when it came to their mimicking of Splash the Pot.
Oh yeah, Splash the Pot,
yeah.
And I mean, there's no denying that it's a network. If you're not familiar with them at all, they are certainly focused on the Asian markets and the Chinese market. They're very large, according to their own kind of traffic cash game figures. They are in the top 5 networks in the world, so they are very large, and they very quick to develop their software, do upgrades. They've only been around, I think, 3 or 4 years. In the last 6 months to a year, they have really been cranking it up. They've also been doing more PR reach outs, so they've just been put themselves on our radar a lot more. And they ran their first ever tournament series, I think, last December, which was a pretty ambitious kind of $3.5 million guaranteed tournament series, which easily covered nearly almost all their guarantees. But they've just announced... what's it called? Blade series, with a pretty staggering $11.5 million guaranteed, which is... how
does that rank with the other major players?
Yeah, so outside kind of PokerStars and Party Poker, it is, it's right up there. It's the same kind of size of Winamax series, which I think is, that's slightly larger. I think it tops out at maybe 13 million euros, $15 million, let's say. But for their second only MTT series, this is a high stakes series. I believe they're guaranteeing at least like $1 million a day, something like that. It is, and honestly, it's staggering.
And that's even more impressive given the fact that they are not operating in any of the regulated markets. as far as I know, correct?
Yeah, they have one skin that is has a UK GC license and operates in the UK market. It's actually ggpoker.co.uk, so it's kind of their flagship kind of internal skin. But the rest of it is, I thought they were going to launch in Sweden, but that didn't come to pass. So as it stands, and in fact, another piece of news we wrote on Poker Industry Pro this week is they just launched in Latvia under a new skin there. Predominantly they are kind of Curacao based or Philippine based license, focused primarily on the, as we understand it, Asian and Chinese markets. So that is, I'm just going to check the dates here. This is starting April 14th, so that's in 2 days' time. Runs for, I think, 2 weekends, so like 10 or 11 days, something like that. That's certainly an unexpected addition to the spring calendar, and one, normally we don't really talk about, but it is right up there, much larger than like 888 series, and so that is Blade.
So I'm going to put
Blade.
Blade. All right, I'm going to put you a bit on the spot here. If you had to total up all of the guaranteed prize pools for the major online poker operators this spring, what are we looking at?
We haven't talked about Scoop yet, but that's 75 million, and then we add on 30 for Party Poker, 140 million dollars, something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty significant.
Yeah. So let's dive into Scoop a bit. I mean, we don't have all the details there.
Okay. Well, we do know that they've got 75 million total guaranteed. How much was it last year?
Yeah, so last year was 65 million for Scoop. The last W Coop, so last fall, was 70 million. So this is, the largest festival ever, the largest online tournament festival ever held by anyone, as we can understand, by a long shot. PokerStars have been increasing very consistently their guarantees on Scoop and WCoop by $5 million, and this is going back like 3 or 4 years. It went 40, 45, 50, 55. So 75 million is not surprising. That's the one thing kind of we did expect, and I wouldn't expect PokerStars to have much difficulty covering this prize pool. Yeah,
one thing that I saw in one of the charts over on Poker Industry Pro that was detailing Scoop and WCoop, and it portrays the total guaranteed prize pool against the total number of events. And, we obviously, maybe not obviously, but there was quite a difference in the number of events for something like WCoop compared to Scoop. Scoop has the 3 tiers, so you're going to see more events there. So it was a bit of a very up and down line on that graph. And then I noticed that since like 2017, that seemed to flatten out.
Yeah, so, and the stat you talk about there is the average guarantee per series, per event, which is something that we talk about quite a lot, because it's quite an interesting indicator to, obviously every series could be massive. They could guarantee however much they wanted if they have more tournaments, right? So you could guarantee 200 million and the series could last 2 months, and you could have 1,000 events, and that really wouldn't mean much, even though it would be a high number. So what we look at as well is the average guarantee per event. And so with Scoop this year, they have hit, and I'll just bring up the numbers there, 370,000 is the average guarantee per event, which is a slight increase on last year, which is good to see. And that definitely shows that although the schedule has expanded to, I think, 201 individual tournaments this year, which is an increase on last year, they're still guaranteeing on average more for each event. So going back to what you were saying there, Mike, with WCoop, of course, classically WCoop was PokerStars' kind of most prestigious series, and they didn't have this 3-tier. They had 1 tier. They were all high buy-in events, and so you had a much higher average guarantee per event of over 600,000. Then in 2017, or was it 2016? I think 2017, they added in the mini WCoop, or like one lower tier.
Okay.
And then in 2018, for the very first time, they made it just a standard 3-tier tournament series. So what we've got now is, it used to be spring, used to be the time where everyone could play. The buy-ins start like $2, and the high buy-ins go up to like a few $100, and then the main events over all 3 tiers, they always guarantee at least $1 million. but everyone could take part. And W Cube was the more kind of prestigious, higher buy-in stuff. If you wanted to play it, you had to satellite in. Now they're pretty much the same. They have roughly the same number of tournaments across the same buy-ins, guarantee the same amount. And yeah, so slight increments each time. So last WQ was 380,000 average guarantee, 70 million total. Scoop very similar this time around.
Yeah, and I think this speaks to the depth of some of the data and some of the graphs that we have over on Poker Industry Pro. But yeah, I was actually looking at a graph that was the number of events versus the total guaranteed prize pool.
Oh, okay.
But they do have a very similar shape.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, although that it's expected to go up to 75 million and we expect it to easily kind of cover, it's still good to see that, and it certainly shows that the appetite for, big scale online poker tournaments is still there amongst poker players. PokerStars is, announcing this a couple of days away from their $10 million guaranteed Sunday Million anniversary. So the investment into big ticket kind of MTT tournaments is absolutely still there, and to see like the average guarantee growing as well is further indication that the investment is there from the online poker operators.
A difference that we've seen this year compared to other years is the scheduling. So they were often, these big tournament series would run together because the operators figured that while people were online playing, they might as well play multiple sites. And, similar to maybe how you have restaurants that are all grouped together in one location, they feed off each other. This year, it seems to be a little different.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody is running theirs this month, basically, except for PokerStars. So they're either running now, and Party Poker's Powerfest is running now. In a bit, we'll have Unibet. They've just announced their Series 5, which also worth noting that is their largest they've ever run as well. A slight increment to the 3 that they ran last year and the one they ran in January. That's running soon. The GG Networks one that we just talked about, that's running this month. But Scoop was going to be standing on its own next month. And this is interesting. So we saw Party Poker say that kind of, we don't look at what PokerStars does anymore. We're going to just do our big festival. They really touted their $30 million guaranteed, which through one lens was their largest ever. Through another lens was quite a bit smaller. It really depends kind of what your comparative is. And I think we talked about that 2 or 3 weeks ago. But something interesting that we did see happen was Party Poker also announced that they were going to run KO series next month. So kind of not their big flagship one, but another series they run 3 times a year that's bounty-only tournaments. And that was scheduled to run next month. And it was over 2 weeks. And when Scoop series was announced, it was going to overlap slightly. It was going to be overlapped by 1 week. And then we wrote about Scoop and we wrote about KO series. And then Party Poker changed their schedule to align exactly with Scoop. So both KO Series and Scoop will run over exactly the same 2 weeks next month. So a pleasant coincidence, or in fact, sides do still look at each other's schedules.
Yeah.
But that will be another $30 million, apparently. The no schedule was announced is just a small note on their website, but that's a huge guarantee for a bounty-only series if Party Poker does run it.
Yeah, $30 million to be a footnote. That seems a bit underplayed on their part, but who knows, maybe we'll start to see that promoted a bit more as the weeks progress.
This leads quite nicely into the next segment on this podcast, when talking about Party Poker's scheduling and changing things up at the last minute, is Party Poker Millions Online, which we had some exclusive details on Pokerfuse a week or 2 back, and then a bit less exclusive details a few days later. Mike, would you like to tell our readers a bit about the history of Millions Online and what happened in the last couple of weeks?
Well, I could tell you about the immediate history, and what recently happened is that, so last year, they ran Millions Online, and it was the largest online poker tournament ever held. The total prize pool reached nearly 22 million. And we saw that Party was getting ready to release some information on the 2019 running, and they had actually put a webpage up that indicated that once again there would be a $20 million guaranteed prize pool. But it seems like recently that bit of information has been scrubbed off the website.
Yeah, and just to be clear, like this was not. Always have to be wary because poker rooms in general can be a little lax with the information they put on their websites, and we wouldn't just run something because there's a tiny little kind of mistake on a web page or an update. But this was very clearly a new page they put up. It said that it was once again going to be $20 million guaranteed. It had the dates for the 2019 series, so it was clearly a proactive publication of information about this upcoming Millions Online. And that's obviously quite a big deal because the last event, which had $20 million guaranteed, covered by 10%, was a big undertaking for Party Poker. They covered it. They ran guaranteed ticket satellites for many, many months to satellite people into this to make this guarantee. So they covered, there's probably quite a bit of cost in getting people in seats by giving away these tickets. It was a near year-long effort to do this. So to launch it now, this is an event that's November, December. To launch it now very quietly in April with that again is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and so just to be clear, the dates are November 24th through December 4th. Currently, those are always subject to change, but they're scheduled to run it for just under 2 weeks, 12 days, I believe it is. And the interesting part is that the buy-in, which was at the $5,000 price point, was it $5,300 last year?
Yeah,
it is now going to be a $10K buy-in.
Well, so this was our sub. We should probably just make clear that as it stands today, the $20 million guarantee is up in the air. That information was since removed after we published our article. So, and we'll circle back to this, but I wanted to make that clear before we talk about the buy-in. But yeah, so. This was our supposition because they talked about in January, February time that all of their Millions events, including online, were going to be a $10,000 or whatever the local currency is buy-in. So it would be a double buy-in, double the buy-in than last time if they were to go this route.
Right, and we have seen evidence on other pages of their site where they are giving away, for example, to Diamond Club Elite members, a seat to what they are calling the $10,300 Millions Online. So there is some indication that is the price point they are going with this year, in addition to the statement that they had made earlier, which could have played into the decision to rethink the $20 million guarantee.
So the only other tidbit of information at this point is that Patrick Leonard, an ambassador for Party Poker and quite an outspoken social media commentator on Party Poker in the industry as a whole, replied to our social media around our article and said, can you remember verbatim, Mike?
I think he put a question mark on the end of his statement, but it was something like double the buy-in, double the guarantee, question mark?
Yeah, so that...
Pinky face?
I mean, that absolutely can't be the case, can it? There's no... if you were to ask me now, I still think it's going to be a $20 million guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they'll shoot up to 25. It seems like they are already starting later with their promotion than they did last year. So they did reach nearly 22 million last year. The increased buy-in is definitely going to have an impact on the number of entries that they draw. But 40 million just seems so ambitious. I'm not sure that they can realistically pull it off.
No, but whatever they do, they're going to have to do quite soon because although it is only April, these things take a long time to ramp up for and start running satellites. So I guess we expect to see more information on this kind of very soon, but that is where we are today.
Yeah, we've reached out to them. We've tried to get them to, disclose some information to us, and everything we've gotten was that they will make a statement in full on the prize pool in the very near future. Yeah,
something else they did say, which again was alluded to in the website copy that we saw, but they did confirm, is that they plan for Millions Online to be part of a larger festival. A larger online tournament series.
Right, which I think there's an indication that may be a high roller series?
Yeah, so the thing is they did this in 2018, that they had website copy the whole time. The Millions Online would be part of High Rollers. I think it's called High Rollers Tournament Series. I might be getting confused with my name because PokerStars also has High Roller Club now, but I think it's called High Rollers. That ended up just not running up until quite late. It was promoted, as I recall it, and then that information was used, and then Millions Online basically just ran on its own. It is like a 7-day event. I think there are multiple day ones, and then it goes day 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, something like that. So this thing goes for a long time, but it did just stand on its own. But they are talking again now that this will be part of a larger tournament series. So yeah, let's wait and see. It's even if it was. I mean, again, we're now just talking at just 20 million. I mean, if you'd asked me a month ago, I kind of thought they might not run this again because I think it was quite costly. You can't really run it again at like 5 million. I think that's what it was before. I think the year prior, the first time we ran it, was like 5 million guaranteed, and then they went 20 million, pulled it off potentially at some cost. I kind of thought they would just stop. So just doing it again at 20 million would be quite an undertaking.
Yeah, and one of the opportunities that they have from a marketing perspective as well would be to throw a guarantee on the first place. So I think it was somewhere, maybe.
I think it's 2.5.
1.3.
I think it was 2.5, wasn't it?
Okay, $20 million guarantee.
We're gonna have to. Well, I'll search for it.
Here it is. It said eventual winner was Manuel. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his screen name. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. But it was a guy named Manuel that took home just over 1.3 million.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so,
after a deal.
Yeah, because they made 4 millionaires, didn't they?
Now you're testing my knowledge. It doesn't go back that far. I'm reading the copy that we have up on Pokerfuse that was basically a screenshot of the Party Poker Millions Online webpage. So yeah, I can't say for sure.
Okay. Well, yeah. So let's wait and see what they do here. I suppose it's anyone's guess at this point just how large and ambitious Team Rob Young and Tom Waters want to go on this one. I think it was 2.5 million guaranteed. Is that crazy?
Yeah. Click here. All right. Last year, so I can see this page, and it says, wow. So he actually won 2.3, not 1.3.
Okay. So it probably was 2.5 guaranteed, and he made a deal.
Yeah. So it looks like they have it wrong on their 2019 page because it says 1.3 million after a heads-up deal. But when you actually go back and look at the at their page that recaps the 2018 series, we see that it's actually just over 2.3 million, and actually the second place finisher after the deal, which is Pim for Mother Russia. Again, I'm not going to try the last name. He took down 2.3 million as well.
Yeah.
Third place has 1.3 million, and fourth place is just under 1.1 million. So yeah, Nick, you were correct. 4 millionaires.
So I'm going to put my hands up and admit that I did not and still have not watched the GPI Global Poker Awards.
Really? So I did, and I watched it live, and then I think I went back and watched parts of it on the replay, which is free on Poker Go. If you want to know how to get there, check out F5 Poker. I think it's linked at the top. You can go there and find your way over to the Poker Go page that has the replay on it. I thought it was very entertaining.
How long was it? Out of interest.
It was, I want to say, about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. I don't remember for sure. It was, just watching it time seemed to go by quickly. It didn't drag at all.
Who had the best acceptance speech?
So there were two good ones that I thought. I did, and I guess they came at it from different perspectives. There was, now you're putting me on the spot because I don't remember the dude's name. Who's the big streamer guy?
Lex? Didn't he win streamer?
No. He did, but the most popular streamer.
Oh, Brad Owen.
Yes. Brad Owen. His speech was very comedic and entertaining. So definitely one that I enjoyed. I also enjoyed Justin Bonomo's speech. It was a bit more political in nature, but I think that it really tried to drive the point home about poker and variance and the idea of luck and privilege. So I definitely appreciated his more serious take on it. Perhaps another speech really stood out to me, and it was, and if you watch it, I don't want to spoil it for you, but it was at the very beginning, and so the first award was Alex Foxen, and he came out and he got the GPI Player of the Year award, and then Ali Najad, who was the host, qualified, or part of his introduction of the Female Poker Player of the Year award, he introduced Kristen Bicknell as Alex Foxen's girlfriend, which I was like, oh, okay, you really didn't have to do that. But, I mean, he got totally, I won't say exonerated, but the focus went off of what he did, because when Kristen got up there, it seemed like a majority of her speech was talking about Alex. So it wasn't just Ali bringing it up, it was her. And it was, you can tell it was coming from a point of genuine appreciation, and she really wanted to take the time to acknowledge Alex and all the hard work he put in. It just seemed like, well, Alex introduced her as that, but then she came up and she talked about, Ali introduced her as Alex's girlfriend, and then she came up and she talked for a majority of the time about Alex as well. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Cool. So, but we talked about this a few weeks ago when the things were first announced, and we had a few criticisms about the awards at that point. The ones that I recall were, I think that we both agreed, was that there was almost no real online focus to it. It was all live, despite it being kind of the Global Poker Awards and the sponsor being PokerStars and streamers streaming online poker. Most of the awards were really live focused. And the other criticism was that there wasn't really any defined criteria of how would you classify the best media content or the best stream. Would you say those two criticisms still hold up, having watched the show?
Yeah, I think so. And so me having watched the show, I can tell you that I have a blind spot, and that is what the awards even were. You know, I remember people that came up there and gave their speech and won the awards, but what they were for seems to have faded into the background a bit for me. And I think it was because of those reasons that you mentioned. And even the criteria as well. Sometimes you have to be careful not to be too specific on how people should judge a particular category. I just feel overall, even beyond the media category, that the ceremony and the awards themselves would benefit from having a bit more clarification on what the criteria for each award will be. Yeah.
I mean, so one thing that I was kind of concerned about was that this just seems so last minute that the end production result would be poor, I guess, but that didn't bear out at all. You said to me just before recording that it was really good.
Yeah, it was super high end production. It looked great on the video feed. A big shout out for me to Ali Najad, because I thought he was fabulous. He did really, really good. There was a very emotional speech in the beginning by Eric Danis, president of GPI. I think it showed very well, regardless of things that we may want to see as improvements with regards to the awards themselves. From a spectacle standpoint, it really, really came off.
I think, I mean, Eric must have been working 24-hour days for a month straight to pull it off to the level he did. So huge props there. And I think, again, all the feedback and the criticism or the suggestions being forward, it does just go to show, and I remember we talked about this last time, that is something that people want. People want to commend each other. People want to shine a spotlight on, the good in the industry, the good work people do, both at the felt and behind the scenes. So, yeah, kind of all criticisms come from that place of love, I suppose.
Yeah, and it also serves to have that kind of discussion, serves to raise the profile of the event a bit, gets people talking about it, raises the buzz. But it seemed like there was some other things that did that as well, and maybe a little bit of social media sniping back and forth after the awards?
So this would be my main exposure to it, is this spat going on between the hosts of the Chip Race podcast, a podcast that I'm a fan of, and the guys over there, I think they do a good job, and Daniel Negreanu, who is also part of the Dat Poker podcast. And we won't go through the whole,
he said, she said, or he said, he said, whatever.
About that. But the thing is that, I mean, these two have, or say Daniel and I think both Dara or maybe it's just between Dara and Daniel, have had a spat going back a long time. So this just seems to be like a further manifestation of that rather than something specific that happened.
Yeah, there's definitely some history that led to it. There were some incidences, I guess, that happened at the event that continued to spark that on. So we'll point the listeners over to the social media feeds, Twitter specifically, of the Chip Race and of Daniel Negreanu, if you want to find out.
Ultimately, Daniel said ooh very audibly when they were announced as winners of the podcast, and then apparently also said that during the voting that some judges prefer. So it's not some huge massive scandal that happened live. And I think the main thing is that this is what awards show are all about, right? I mean, you have big spats about, you look at the Oscars, the only thing I hear about them is, all the drama that goes around with it. And I think if you didn't have that, it wouldn't be on my radar at all. An award show absolutely needs people saying how somebody should never have won, and someone said this person was totally snubbed. And so I think the Brad Owen thing was really, really good for exactly that reason. And I think this spat between the two podcasts is fantastic. I think that's exactly what puts it on your radar. And something that I was listening to, name drop one more podcast that I listened to, which is The Fives. I was listening to that this week, and I think one criticism from those guys, which I absolutely agree with, is that, or something that needs to start happening now for the next awards show, is when things happen, big events happen, the GPI should be there going like, oh, will this win for next year? You can start the ramp up for the next awards show now and say, this is a great piece of media content. What a great moment, share that clip and say, this has got to be shortlisted for next year. What do you think? You've got to have that build up. And you were saying before we started recording, Mike, that even now you feel like the GPI website could be doing more to promote the award show that's just passed.
Yeah. So I went there to see, I was actually going to write a piece of content on it. So I figured, where's the best place to go to find out who won is the GPI website. But when I got there, there was no list of winners, and there was a Twitch box right at the top, but it didn't have even the replay of the awards ceremony. So yeah, there's things that can be improved upon. I definitely think that trying to keep the name of the awards and the idea of the categories in the media throughout the year, like you said, to nominate when you see something good, let's throw the GPI, the Global Poker Awards tag on it, and let's get it out there and get it promoted. I think that will be a good move.
And of course,
forward.
we're already like a third of the way through the month, and so we just got January's PSPC. That we could be talking about that now, about how that's got to be a highlight for next year's awards.
Right, through the lens of the awards, to look at all of the occurrences that happen throughout the year through that lens, I think could be a really good marketing approach for the guys over at GPI.
Yeah, and we're going to keep pushing for more online awards. Do you think, having watched it, that there's no reason why they shouldn't have had best poker software or best online poker tournament series, or do you feel like that wouldn't have really fitted into the...
Well, no. I mean, I think that it definitely, and I admit that I'm biased because we come from that world of online poker. So I definitely think that it would fit in well. And one thing that got me thinking is when you look at all of the podcasts, the poker podcasts that are out there, it strikes me that we are one of the very few that is not hosted by poker players. I mean, the Fives strikes me as, those guys don't strike me as regular players themselves, Lance and Donnie, but they do talk about and talk to players, so they do have that connection. I think we are probably one of the very few that just talk about the news. I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, if we're not on the list,
All right, let's we'll keep our nomination pitch down to a minimum on this show. But yeah, I thought it was a great event. It was well pulled off. Props to those guys, and hoping that we can continue the momentum going into 2019. One of the biggest, risks or detractions, challenges, let's call it that. One of the biggest challenges for online poker is to keep the automated software tools and what is commonly referred to as bots under control. And we saw one of the major online poker operators come out this week and talk about their experience with bots recently, which isn't something that we always get. There's not always complete transparency, but Party Poker did come out this week and talk about how they steps they have taken to help clean up the game.
Yeah, so and you absolutely hit the note there, which is there's no real transparency with this. And so, Party Poker said, and not just Party Poker, all operators really, Party Poker said between December the 1st and March 31st, so a 4-month period, they closed 277 accounts, which they associated entirely with running bots, and confiscated or redistributed through $735,000 back to players who were impacted by these bots. I have this problem with all stories like this, and this is just in the mainstream media as well, is that, and I suppose we're guilty of this because we wrote this article and we present these absolute figures, and there's nothing to compare it to. Is that a lot? Is that 10 times what they did the time previous? So that number just kind of sits there. I mean, it sounds like a lot. It works out something like $2,500 per account. So these bot accounts weren't just sitting there playing, with $10 in their account playing microstakes. These were whether, again, bot people don't withdraw their money that frequently, don't really know, and we're not going to sit and pretend that we know the inner workings of this industry, because we rarely do these numbers come across our desk to write about.
Yeah, and even further on the transparency point is we have no idea how much these bots took off of human players.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that lack of transparency there's been plenty of reasons stated by operators in the past as to why they don't disclose that figure, and there may be some legitimacy to that. I'm not trying to say that there isn't, but that not being able to see that information, I think, just casts a bigger cloud over the entire topic.
Yeah, so the other nuggets of information that were released in this press release from Party Poker were that they have a new poker fraud team in charge of hunting out these accounts and closing them and redistributing money. They said that it comprises former professional poker players, which is curious. They say here, quote, people who are equipped with the necessary knowledge and expertise to investigate suspicious activity and aid Party Poker in ridding the site of unscrupulous accounts. So, again, this is one of those, I hate to be negative because it's obviously a great effort, but the first thing you think is, well, were you not doing this until December the 1st, 2018? And I think a lot of people are going to think that. They also say more than 75% of the account closures came as a result of detection thanks to this newly created fraud team, which again is just like, so 25% weren't due to them. So what were they due to? Like, if 25% are still through player reports, that's a very poor percentage. But of course, if it's 25% through the other things that you have internally, that's fine. Right. But then are you saying prior to December 1st, 75% were just not being detected? I mean, again, kudos that you've taken that step, but it's clearly made a huge change. And it's worth stressing at this point that other operators absolutely have had this problem. The biggest online PokerStars have had bot ring closures in the past. I think there was a big ring in PLO 2 or 3 years ago. There were at the All-In Double or Nothing tables that led.
Wow, you're going way back.
That led to them stopping offering that format because it was so conducive to
difficult to police. Yeah.
Winamax had people at their lottery sit and go games as recently as last year to players who are considered using bots or automated tools. So this is a widespread problem. It's fantastic that Party Poker is getting that information out. But the other context there, Mike, is why they've announced this now, which I find interesting.
Yeah, well, and before we get into the why, I will say that for all of the questions that they have that the press release leaves, I still think they did a pretty decent job of spinning it into a positive. So I'll give them kudos there for sure. But it's the next question is what other steps are they taking? And I think that Rob Young has once again reiterated that they are going to be removing other third-party tools such as HUDs, the use of HUDs on their site.
Yeah, and this is why they put this press release out now. In my mind, Rob Young stated, and I find it a bit strange at the moment that a lot of the news is coming from him, who's doing interviews with journalists rather than formal statements. He said about a month ago to journalist at Calvin Lee Davy that HUDs would be banned soon, I think. So all HUDs would be banned, and he stated again in a video podcast with Jeff Gross, who's their recent ambassador, former PokerStars ambassador, that all third-party tools would be banned. He reiterated that HUDs by the end of this month would be banned, all tracking. They would prevent hand history downloads. Everyone would have an alias change. There will be a new replayer. Basically going full, no third-party tools at all. So following in the footsteps of Unibet, Run It Once, Poker, and definitely the trend that we're seeing in the industry. So big change. And I think one criticism when any site does this, and absolutely in the case of Party Poker, is that players say, well, how are we going to be able to police your games? We're detecting these bot accounts, we're reporting them to you. We need to know this information. We want tracking stats on our players because we can identify when they are exhibit behaviours like bots. And I see this was an immediate response to this press release saying, well, look, we feel we can confidently do this now because we have this new fraud detection team.
A question, and maybe your recollection is better than mine. Is this the first official announcement that we've seen out of Party Poker with regards to reimbursing players as a result of closing down bot accounts?
It is the only one that I'm familiar with. Yes, that's not to say they haven't done it, but
they may just not have promoted it or put it out in a press release.
I mean, I'll be honest. I'll be surprised if players had not had some reimbursements, but I don't remember any kind of PR about it. It's something that PokerStars has done a bit in the past, and players often go on forums and say, hey, I've added this money back into my account, that kind of thing, and they receive an email saying this is due to these accounts getting closed. And Party Poker, I think, is, I would say, less forthcoming about that, but obviously PokerStars has absolutely been kind of a big target because they have the liquidity, so I imagine that unscrupulous players and bot operators feel like they can fly under the radar a bit more just because it's such a huge player base. So I wouldn't be surprised if PokerStars has been the brunt of it for a long time. They absolutely do have invested a lot and have world-class kind of detection, which might have led bot operators to go onto smaller sites. So it's great to see the top line for me is it's great to see Party Poker talking about this now. I hope they continue to, and they're not just doing it one time to try and quash the concerns about the banning of HUDs.
Yeah. And as the industry tends to move and shift towards less allowance for third-party tools, we are also seeing that PokerStars is taking further steps in limiting seeding scripts.
Yeah, not to say, we called it, but we kind of called it a few weeks ago when PokerStars announced their new rules regarding automated seating scripts, which are tools which you click a button and it'll automatically find a good table for you to sit in based on, if a player is color-coded, you've color-coded them as a not particularly good player, or you have statistics saying that, they're very loose and passive or something like that, will automatically seat you in tables in seats that fit your criteria. So they're automated seating scripts, and PokerStars prohibited that if the tool used player profiling. And they did that a month or two ago. And we said at the time, on this podcast that a problem with that approach is that third-party tools would try and work around it and follow the line of that rule, but find clever things to do, and that's kind of exactly what happened.
Right. So what we saw was the result was from changes that these seeding script developers had made to their product. We saw just an abundance of reserved seats at tables, and players were having a hard time trying to find a seat. You'd look at a table and you'd see flooded with these reservations and no players sitting in the seats.
Yeah, I believe what happened was that these tools, so they couldn't use color coding or statistics, so they purely used the metric of whether a table was filling up fast, I think. I'm guessing here, but potentially there's just that waterfall effect of like one seating script goes, oh, we'll join that, and then another seating goes, well, someone's just joined that, I'll join that table, and go, oh, there's only one seat left, I'll join that, and now you've got 2 or 3 people playing, 3 reserved seats, and then all the players go, well, I don't want to take that seat because those are all clearly seating script people who've got the reserved seat, and then no one takes it, and so then tables never fill. That's my guess of what happened. This only came out in the last 24 hours, so I might have got the specifics there wrong, but broadly speaking, PokerStars tried to do a middle-of-the-road thing with the seating scripts. The tool developers did something clever to get around it, tried to use different metrics to decide, and the end result was worse than it was better. And so PokerStars have now just banned all automated seating scripts regardless of what criteria they use, which I'm surprised they didn't just do from the start, but that's where we are today.
Yeah, we haven't yet received any press release on the complete banning, have we?
No, we haven't. So
yeah,
this is actually kind of an old school throwback to how PokerStars used to operate 2-3 years ago, which is like they post this information on 2+2, and then we write a news story about it, and then so these days this very, very rarely happens, but it's really quite strange. Someone started a thread on 2+2 saying, I've started this petition. I mean, also, how old school is that? You start a petition. You start a petition saying, like, we need to ban all seating scripts because this has happened, and then like within hours, almost like the skeptic might think this was like a constructed thing, but I don't think it was. But like within hours, a new green named PokerStars representative came on and said, yes, we've addressed this and banned all seating scripts. And that's where we are.
Right. And I would be very surprised if it was completely a reaction to the thread being started. I have a feeling that PokerStars follows their games close enough to have seen what was happening. So this was probably coincidental in timing, but I expect that at some point we are going to see an official press release. I haven't checked to see if their terms and conditions have been updated on the site. It's likely that that's coming.
Yeah, we do have an official statement from PokerStars stating that this has happened and that they all banned. So we're confident on that. Another factor is that this might have actually just happened very fast. Like maybe a tool yesterday did an update which completely just changed the environment. All of a sudden now there's a few hundred people using this tool, and it's auto reserving the seats.
I don't think that was the case. I did some digging around in 2+2 yesterday, and I saw that some of the posts complaining about these reserves had gone back a ways, so it wasn't just within the last day or two.
Okay. So I'm just glancing at our show notes here, and we've got one little thing to mention, which is something that happened at America's Card Room that I saw you wrote, Mike, an F5 post about, and I don't know anything about it, so maybe you can finish us off with that.
All right. Yeah, so this goes back to the whole bot topic, and it turns out that there was a streamer. His name is Eric Collier, if I'm correct. Let me pull it up. Yep, Eric Collier, and he got down to heads up in a $16.50 buy-in with a 10K guarantee, and while he's streaming this on Twitch, it turns out that his opponent was a bot. The opponent folded every hand pre-flop while they were heads up.
I mean, that could be I don't know. I'm trying to play devil's advocate.
Yeah. So the person that we know, the streamer, the Eric Collier, the live player, the real human, started at more than a 2-to-1 chip disadvantage when it got down to heads up. And I mean, even the last hand, I think it was he folded 180,000 chip big blind to a min raise, leaving him less than 12,000 chips.
I'll tell you what it is. I've got a theory.
All right, let's hear it.
The person was away from keyboard, so there was nobody at the computer, but he has a tool which, if you get sat out, automatically sits you back in again, which is a tool that exists because I know tablers have that. It's a hotkey thing that will sit you back in if you sit out.
Wow. So, yeah, in theory that sounds okay, but there's no way, because the account in question knocked out the third player to get to heads up.
But so it's a player, he's playing, and then there's an emergency, fire in the apartment, gets a call, he's taken away, but he's got software that keeps him sat back in. I think that's more likely than it's a bot.
Really? More likely?
So that tool definitely exists. It's useful because if you're multi-tabling, you always sit out at tables, but you want to get sat back in. And yeah, I mean, it's more likely than if it's a tournament. I don't know, a bot in a multi-table tournament where a human doesn't sit in when it gets to like the final table or heads up would surprise me, honestly. If there's a lot of money on the line, normally you would think someone would sit in at that point.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll put that out there as a possibility, and I will also say that you should be expecting to get a call from America's Card Room public relations team. Maybe get a job offer coming your way, maybe.
All right.
Branding is something that we commonly see in the online poker world, and there was a release of, I was just going to say release of new spin and goes, but that's not actually what it turned out to be. We did see a new branding partnership recently between the UFC and PokerStars, and the new UFC branded spin and goes did hit the tables this week. Nick, you have thoughts on that?
I don't get it. I just do not understand it. So the timeline roughly is, I think it was in January that PokerStars signed this deal with UFC.
Yeah.
So PokerStars' name is on the billboards in the UFC televised matches. Matches again.
On the pitch.
Yeah, on the pitch. So big branding deal. And then a month ago, we had a little exclusive story that they were planning these UFC-themed spin and goes. We guessed at the time that maybe they'd be four-handed, maybe they'd be knockout, maybe something a bit different. A couple of weeks ago, story on F5, where we suggested that in fact maybe they won't be that much different, and they'll just be three-handed. And they came out this week, and it surprised me still that all they have done is all spin and goes are now just branded UFC spin and go. So they're not an extra game, a different game. It's just they're just called UFC Spin and Goes now.
Yeah, so we were talking a bit about this before we jumped on the air, and I guess I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It seemed like a perfectly good branding exercise, partnership to reach new people. But Nick, you thought there was more opportunity.
It just seems like a missed opportunity, and that. So I get it. I suppose what they're saying is the idea is they want to bring in new players with this, so people are going to see the PokerStars brand because they're watching a UFC match, and they go on PokerStars and they'll see there's this UFC themed promotion. Another thing is that this was released with no promotions at all. They're just starting to trickle out some promotions. A PR just came across our desk like in the last half an hour or so about a free roll, I think, or you can win to go and watch the next UFC fight. But it was released with no kind of other promotions. So the idea is player come down and says, there's a UFC game, then you play a UFC game. So I suppose I get that, but I just feel like, are they always just UFC themed spin and goes now? Or like, will in a year time, will they just go back to spin and goes? Like, that just seems odd to me. Another thing which just doesn't work is that PokerStars has Spin and Go Omaha, which is their obviously PLO Spin and Goes, and they have Spin and Go Max, right? So you've got the PokerStars client, the top tab at the top says UFC Spin and Go. You click on that, and then you've got UFC Spin and Goes, they're the no limit hold'em ones. But then you also have Spin and Go Max, and they're not UFC themed, but they sit under a UFC Spin and Go tab because they're all UFC. But if you play Max, the tables don't look like the Octagon; they look like Spin and Go Max because it's a different game, and that wouldn't work. And the Omaha ones are still Omaha; they're not UFC themed, but the regular ones. So, like, just from a user's point of view, you're like, okay, so these are special UFC ones, but they're the least, the most normal, common. And there's like 20 different buy-ins of them. And then you have UFC-themed spin and goes, which send you to Monte Carlo to play in the EPT Monte Carlo package. And you have a UFC-themed spin and go to win a ticket to the Sunday Million. And you're playing on the Octagon to win an EPT ticket. It seems so strange. Why not have spin and go and then UFC spin and go, which is four-handed? Like, why not that? And then existing players will be interested and new players will be like, oh, there's a special UFC thing. And it makes sense because maybe the game ties in with UFC fights a bit in a rule change.
Think of live poker. We often see sponsors on the felt. This is a bit grander scale than that, but same concept.
Well, so why not just make them heads up? Well, you could have heads up spin and goes, couldn't you? Well, why not have that?
No. Yeah, I mean, winner take all, obviously, but
but a random prize. Why not have that? Why not?
Yeah.
So they did this with so their knockout tournaments. They branded heavily with I can't remember one of their sports stars at the time. Was it Neymar or somebody? I suppose I got that a bit more because it was a new tab, it was a new thing, it was a new branding, it was a new lobby. This is just like a theme replacement, and I'm not sure if it's, I don't know. Yeah.
From my perspective, I think that all the things that you're talking about would be fabulous ideas. What I see that would be targeted at their existing player base. I think what they're doing is probably targeted at bringing new players in, because improving upon the format of a spin and go is not going to have as big an impact on a new player that's new to PokerStars as it would on an existing player. I think that their main objective here is to reach new audiences.
But wouldn't you think, if you're a fan of UFC, you see the PokerStars brand, you go and play PokerStars, you see a UFC game, you expect it to relate to UFC in some way?
Yeah, perhaps. I think that would be an added, maybe a perk that a UFC fan would find when playing the game, is that it relates a little bit more to the sport that they love, for sure.
Well, so another thing that PokerStars announced this week, which I think is worth just dipping into very briefly, is PokerStars VR. So something that we both play with a little bit. We might have talked about on this podcast before. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Yeah.
So this week they announced that. Well, so they announced it. I found interesting through their PR that they were getting new features in PokerStars VR. The main one is they've added sit and go tournaments. And that was how the PR was structured. But the thing that I found most interesting and what I wrote about is that they've added monetization. So as I understand up to now, there was no monetization in the game. Obviously, it's a free play game, but they have now added that you can spend real money to purchase free chips. So just like your Zynga Poker or PokerStars social poker app, I think it's called Jackpot Poker, you can now purchase chips to play, and that's changed the entire economy of it. So. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that my first impression was, wow, there was already a barrier in place for me to play a poker VR game, in that I needed to go out and purchase an Oculus Rift or some other headset. And now, on top of that, there's also the added cost of purchasing play chips. So that was my initial reaction, but I think looking at it now, there does need to be some way to manage the chip economy within that environment. And,
well, you still get free chips, so you can still play for free. So just like with Zynga Poker, you still if you sign up, you get, let's say, 10,000 chips, I believe, and I think they still have it that if you dip below that, after a week or on a weekly basis, your account will reset to 10,000 chips. So you can still play the low stakes games, the low buy-in tournaments, the low buy-in cash games, and you can constantly do that. So again, this is always like it's free to play. But if you want to play the high stakes games and you don't want to grind your way up playing these things, you can spend real money to enter like the high roller tournament. So I think it's always, I see your point that like, yeah, you would have to obviously invest a lot. And this is my always thing with the VR is that I doubt anyone's going to go out and buy a headset because there's PokerStars VR. So it's only going to turn to people who already have it, or you're going to get a critical mass where there's enough VR games that people go and pick one up.
Sure, but all right, so look at it this way. Let's say that you already have the headset and you're out there, you're playing PokerStars VR, and you bust your roll in an hour. This gives you a way to continue playing on the site, which increases their liquidity and increases their risk, their reach. It gets them the game to be more popular, because without that way to get additional chips on demand, you'd have to wait until the period.
Yeah, I presume that's true. I mean, I guess in theory it might have been that if you busted your whole roll, you would just instantly get more chips. But
right, but then that leads us back to managing.
Yeah, so another thing that they did with this was they've added rake for the first time. So cash games are raked at 5% and tournaments are raked at 10%. Which, yeah, fairly standard, but obviously something you want to do if you want to kind of add internal value to your chips, which have no kind of external, extrinsic value. Yeah. I think I just made that word up, right. Extrinsic. But yeah, so they've added rake in, and so they've also added these clear tier of buy-ins, and they've added their sit and goes, and I think the highest buy-in sit and go is, I don't know, let's say like $1 million or something like that, which you would have to grind a lot to get that, or spend quite serious money. It was like $50 if you wanted to just buy your entry to like the highest stakes sit and go. So there's an opportunity to play for like real high money in this obviously fake world. And they've also found interesting, which I'm not sure is done in any other kind of social poker free play game, which is at the cash game tables, you have to have a minimum bankroll as well as a minimum buy-in. So like to sit down at the 1 million chip buy-in tables, you have to have a bankroll of at least 5 million.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't remember seeing that before in any other free to play poker game.
No. So I mean, I guess it kind of stops people like sitting down with one buy-in and busting it. I guess it's kind of like a player protection mechanism.
Maybe increases the realistic nature of the game in that way, because you don't have people just taking shots with 2 or 3 big buy-ins.
I think the most interesting thing about this piece of news is obviously PokerStars thinks it's worthwhile to try and monetize this game, which has got to be a good sign. I mean, we know that it's proved popular within the pretty small niche that is VR gaming. Like, I think it's ranked quite high in the VR games. It's got a lot of really positive reviews, and we've played it when we were in at the PCA. I know you were frustrated because you kept smashing your hand on the desk, and there were some technical issues. But my experience once I got involved was like it was good. Like, and the other thing was it was genuinely really social. So you've got a headset on. People are talking, real people are talking, and I actually felt like a bit nervous playing because there's other people like sitting there like criticizing you, and like it's quite hard to like pick your chips up, and there's real people going like, dude, just like put your hand down and put so like it was a real experience.
It's definitely different from online poker in that regard, in that you have there's that added level of social interaction. You have chat in online poker, but this is completely different.
And imagine sitting down playing in like one of these new sit and go tournaments, and it's 1 million chip buy-in, and that is you've either spent $50 to buy that stack, or you've grinded like a few weeks to build that up. There's probably like real tension there. Like, that's going to feel pretty close to a real money poker experience, which I think is, so it's fascinating. I think PokerStars has taken that step. It's definitely a good signal that that they're pleased with how this product is going. So I wish I kind of had a headset so I could watch it a bit more closely. I'm not sure if there's anyone out there streaming, because I know it's got built-in streaming as well. I'm not sure if there's anyone out there that's kind of streaming it, but
streaming of free-to-play games is probably not as popular as real money, but I think I have seen some of the PokerStars pros stream. I believe, I don't even want to say, because I think it was Jeff Gross, when he was still with Stars, was doing a home game.
Yeah.
Or maybe that was intention. I can't remember if he actually went through with it. I was a bit surprised at how quickly they rolled this out. I mean, VR has been, so they announced it when last August they disclosed it to the media in Barcelona, and it's really only been a matter of months since it's been open to the general public, and this is a pretty big step forward.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're working with an external development team. Lucky VR, I think, is behind the game itself. So I'm not sure if they already have an existing poker VR game that's kind of been reworked and rebranded, or at least they've got an existing kind of tool set that they're using. But yeah, I mean, they've certainly turned this around fast, and yeah, I find it's a very interesting direction. As we know, like the free play market through the lens of Zynga is huge. They are like up there in terms of like how much party poker make in real online revenue from poker. So like there's a lot of money in social poker games. Obviously VR is going to be a much smaller niche, but very interesting direction.
Yeah, and I can say that if an Oculus Rift headset magically appeared in your mailbox and mine, we'd probably be more there'd probably be more conversation on future podcasts in regards to the PokerStars VR product.
I 100% agree. If one of those boys just be right on that. Right. And obviously a powerful enough computer to use that headset, because you can't just plug it into any old laptop. So probably on my doorstep would have to be like a really like beefy like computer.
Gaming computer. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Why not?
But so there you go. So PokerStars UFC and PokerStars VR, both in the news this week.
All right, I haven't looked at the timer on our recording yet, but I've got to imagine that it's approaching the 1 hour mark, and I think it's probably time for us to wrap up. Nick, would you say?
Yeah, it's the official double length edition, and we won't be making a habit of this for sure.
Season 2, Episode 1 in the books. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.